Now, calling a film the greatest film of all time is a very bold statement nowadays. There are so many films nowadays that couldn't be considered the greatest films of all time. Now, I have a lot of favorite movies that I would consider amazing, and I also enjoy watching animated films. Some of my favorite films of all time are animated. Now, one of my favorite animation studios out there has got to be Dreamworks. They aren't the best studio and they have made some pretty bland films, but Dreamworks has made an animated film that I believe is one of the greatest animated films of all time, and that film is The Prince of Egypt. The Prince of Egypt is a 1998 2D animated musical drama film directed by Steve Hinker, Brenda Chaplin, and Simon Wells. The film is based on the biblical story called The Ten Commandments. The film starts off showing the treatment of the slaves in Egypt. The King Pharaoh, played by Patrick Stewart, is torturing the slaves and demands that the firstborn slaves get killed. One family sets their firstborn baby free on a river, whose name is Moses, played by Val Kilmer. Moses later survives after almost dying from a crocodile, and is brought up by the pharaoh and his family. Years later, Moses and his brother Ramesses, played by Ralph Fiennes, are troublemakers and usually cause chaos and don't care about their consequences. The pharaoh puts a lot of pressure on Ramesses, as he is set to be the next ruler of Egypt. One night, Moses runs into his old brother and sister, played by Sandra Bullock, and the motherfucker himself, Jeff Goldblum. Let's go! And he realizes that he was born a slave. This is very hard for him, as his whole life has basically been a lie. The next day, he accidentally kills a man for being a slave, and he runs away. After running in the desert for a while, he comes across a woman named Zipporah, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, and her family. He previously helped Zipporah escape from the captivity in Egypt. He starts living in the camp and becomes a shepherd there. After many years, God visits Moses from a bush and basically tells him to set his homies free from Egypt. Moses travels back home and confronts his brother and tells him to let his people go. Ramesses refuses, and this starts a rivalry between Moses and Ramesses. Moses gets the 10 plagues in Egypt in this phenomenal musical number, which I'll talk more about later. After the many plagues, Ramesses still refuses to let Moses' people go, but the straw that breaks the camel's back is when God kills all the firstborns, including Ramesses' son. He finally caves in and lets his slaves go, but later on in the film, he changes his mind and chases after them. After God blocks them with a firewall, Moses parts the Red Sea in one of the greatest looking animated sequences in cinema. Moses and his slaves are set free, while Ramesses is left all alone. And yeah, that's it. Now, why do I think that this is one of the greatest animated films of all time? Well, allow me to ramble on about why I love this film so much. First of all, let's talk about the story and the source material. Now, like I said, this film is based on the biblical story named The Ten Commandments. I've only read the Bible occasionally, and I must say, it's a pretty good sci-fi novel, I'm not gonna lie. I mess, of course, and I don't really know much about the original source material. I did watch the 1956 film called The Ten Commandments, which I hear is very faithful, and that film is 4 hours long, what the fuck? But the 1956 film is pretty good. But this film is more of a retelling, so let's go into it. Despite being a PG animated kids film, it is extremely dark and does not hold back. They are not afraid to show off the dark and dramatic elements here. Like, the film literally starts off showing the torture of the slaves and babies being killed, what the fuck? The way they show the treatment of the slaves and how they are suffering is extremely well done. And yes, there are some slightly comedic elements, cause this is a kids film at the end of the day. And it can be a bit annoying, it isn't too bad, and can kinda be funny sometimes. Like, it doesn't really stick out like a sore thumb, and it doesn't ruin the film. The humor here feels natural, unlike the film The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The humor there sticks out so bad and does not fit at all. They try and do slapstick humor in a film that wants to be dark and dramatic. Thankfully in The Prince of Egypt, they know how far to take the humor, and it's really good. And the character development and story themes are fantastic. In the end of the day, this film is about two brothers who are falling apart and going against each other. In the beginning of the film, we see their relationship and how much they love and care for each other. They have a fantastic brother/best friend relationship, and it's amazing. As the film goes on, Moses starts to realize how fucked up the treatment of the slaves are. When he realizes that he was born a slave, he looks at what's happening around him very differently. We see him wanting to change and stop all the pain and suffering that's going on all around him. It's great character development, and it feels real and genuine. And the main antagonist, Ramesses, is probably one of the greatest animated antagonists of all time. He starts off as what seems like a nice and well-meaning character, but he slowly follows his father's footsteps and becomes a cruel ruler. Seeing him slowly turn into this monster is fantastic to see and also kinda sad. And the side characters here are really good. The two high priests are mainly the comic reliefs played by Steve Martin and Martin Short. While some people may find them annoying, I personally find them to be really funny, and they have a great musical number.
Ramesses, you're in trouble, young man.
Get down here. I think you owe us an apology.
Oh, my new thing.
I am so upset.
All the other characters like Aaron, Miriam, Zipporah, and Jethro are really good. Even God is a character, and he's kind of a dick, to be honest. Like, he deadass murdered some innocent lads just to get into Ramses' head. And the cast here is amazing. They are all big actors, but they do such a phenomenal job here. Although it is a bit weird that they got some British and American actors to play these Egyptians. I would have liked it if they got some Egyptian actors to play these characters, but they still do a great job. In the behind the scenes of the film, you can tell how much the actors cared about doing the film.
It is a timeless story. It's quite magnificent.
As a child hearing this story, you could never possibly understand it the way you understand it now.
A brother story, really, of two brothers that fall apart, you know, that become estranged to the point where they're completely opposite.
Both of these men care about each other in a way that doesn't make their calling or responsibilities incidental.
They're enemies.
Nowadays, most actors are like, oh, I love doing this film because you get to record in your pajamas and I was so honored to play this character. When really, they're just doing it for the money. But these actors genuinely care about the source material and the film. Now, one thing that people really praise this film for is the music and animation. And it is some of the greatest animation and music I have ever seen and heard in an animated film. The animation is some of the greatest 2D animation I've ever seen on screen. The long shots and dramatic shots are gorgeous and stunning to look at. There are some CG elements here and they are slightly outdated, but this was the late 90s, so you kind of got to expect that. And the character animation and facial expressions here are simply beautiful. The film has some of the greatest facial expressions I've ever seen in the film. You can tell how a character is feeling just by simply looking at their faces and the animation. The animators put so much effort here, and they perfectly capture the emotions. And also the Egyptian feel here is great. Some animators flew to Death Valley just to paint the backgrounds, and it is honestly stunning to look at. And of course, we have one of the most beautiful and stunning animated sequences in cinema. The parting of the Red Sea.
You shall do my wonders.
Compared to other partings of the Red Sea and other adaptations of the Ten Commandments, this is easily the best looking. When the slaves are walking through the Red Sea, you can feel how windy and cold the water is. It doesn't look easy to walk through, they're struggling to get through, but it is done so beautifully. Especially this shot here, with the giant whale in the background and all the lights. It is so beautiful to look at. And also the crowd shots here are humongous and gorgeous. There are so many characters on screen most of the time, like in the opening when we see all the slaves, and especially when all the slaves are escaping from Egypt. It looks beautiful. Now, am I forgetting anything? Oh yeah, the music, it's fucking amazing. Now, this film is a musical, which some people might think that it'll ruin the tone of the film, but I personally believe the songs here make the film 10 times better. Songs like Deliver Us, Heaven's Eyes, Plagues, and If You Believe are some of the best songs I've ever heard in an animated film. The singing in orchestra here is so great to listen to, and I find myself listening to all of them all the time. My favorite songs here is the opening song and the Plagues. They perfectly set the mood and are incredibly well done. Now, like I said, some people will be against the songs, saying that this is supposed to be a dramatic film and the songs stick out. And honestly, I don't agree with that. In fact, I think the songs add to the film. Without the songs, it wouldn't be as good as it is. Like, the songs perfectly encapsulate feeling and emotions here. That's what songs are supposed to do in an animated film. They're supposed to capture the emotion when words don't do enough. They are all amazing. Now, in conclusion, this is honestly one of the greatest animated films of all time. The songs, animation, characters, and story is amazing. I cannot recommend this film enough. It's easily one of DreamWorks' best films. Well, it might probably tie with Shark Tale since, you know, Shark Tale is Shark Tale. Nothing can beat that. But for real though, The Prince of Egypt is a phenomenal film. I wish DreamWorks would make more dramatic films like this that push boundaries. I do enjoy a lot of their modern films, well, some of them, but I would love to see them make more films like this one. I would highly recommend watching this film if you can. It is truly amazing. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this video. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.